Hello, everyone. We are live here on the Monster Report, and we are glad to have you. The Monster Report's a show highlighting those entertaining creatures of film history. And today we're going to be talking some monsters of the video games. I have with me today my guests, Steve Roberts and Alex Rushdy, joining us from 13 AM Games. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing well. How are you?
Pretty good.
Excellent. And not too long ago, we got a really cool trailer that we saw for Dawn of the Monsters. Some of us have been kind of hearing about it and getting real excited about things with Dawn of the Monsters. So tell me how the trailer to get us excited for things, where the progress is on Dawn of the Monsters. When can we maybe anticipate it coming out for us, and kind of take it from there? Who would like to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Give an update about where things are. So we released that trailer in November. Yeah, I think it was November. Yeah. And it got a really an incredible response. Our most viewed trailer that our company's ever done for any video game. So immediately super exciting, and then a lot of buzz, a lot of coverage that we saw, which is really cool for a little indie kaiju game. And then we've been just plugging away on it ever since, and for all intents and purposes, like the content of the game is done. It's just a matter right now of us and WayForward, our publisher, we're just testing, checking for bugs, and going through that process of making sure that the game's working right, that there's no issues, errors, doing that kind of quality assurance testing. And if all that looks good, then the next step is we will put it into what's called certification, where we hand it off to Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, and they run it through their own ringer of tests. And if that all clears out, then we'll be good to release. So, I mean, that's still a lot of work to be done, but the game itself, the game content is complete.
And so when it does get that ultimate release date, is it going to come out on one platform first and then as it can be certified, the next ones, or is it kind of like all those platforms, be available for download instantaneously?
Yeah, the plan is that every version's available on the same day, the same time. So cool. that'll mean, I mean, that's Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PC. That's 6 platforms at once. Wow. So hopefully our goal is to make sure that like anyone who wanted to play it would have a machine that could play it. So hopefully we can get that done quickly.
Yeah, and so tell me about the trailer. Putting that together, was that you gentlemen? What was kind of the inspiration, or what kind of how is it that you drew things together to put that together? Are these actually maybe even what do you want to call them? The movie clips from the actual game itself?
Yeah, the trailer was put together by WayForward, but the content that they pulled from is all stuff from the game. Even the animated sequence, that's kind of part of the opening sequence for the video game. And I think even that version still has the audio work that Steve did, because he
just recently updated some of it, but overall it's pretty much
very cool. And when those cinematic, those cutaways, I guess you call them, for that you've got an open, is there some kind of throughout the story mode version of the game?
Yeah, there's cutscenes throughout the game. They aren't all fully animated like an animated kind of cartoon. That's just for the opening sequence of the game. But then within the game itself, there's a bunch of dialogue sequences with all the different human characters. There's kind of comic book style cutscenes that show up, and then there's, you know, in the game itself, there's the camera might focus in on something, and you might have monsters move on and roar, and then you go right into the action. So there's a lot of different kind of cinematic moments.
Cool. And I was going to say that comic book kind of look and style, along with the idea of anime, but I was also struck by that, the idea of the comic book style colorization and just how certain colors work. I could definitely see things like speech bubbles or the narration banners kind of come across. Did your cutscenes utilize those, or do you got some real voices in there?
We've got a little bit of both. I mean, we do have the game is fully voiced, so you know, we've got actually a really cool voice cast. We've got you know, Patrick Seitz, Amelie, a bunch of other people that have worked on stuff from even from Godzilla Singular Point. We found out we have an actor who worked on Godzilla Singular Point.
Yeah.
So Attack on Titan, Evangelion, we've got actors from all these great anime and video games that came together on this. And then as far as like, you know, that kind of cutscene or comic book style stuff, we actually have in the cutscenes and in the game, those big graphic onomatopoeias. So, you know, when, you know, if you're reading an old issue of Batman and he punched someone, it would be like pow, sock, whatever. But we've taken the idea of the onomatopoeias from Japanese manga. So we actually worked with someone to come up with all the proper onomatopoeias and different descriptors for an explosion or something getting its head ripped off or whatever the moment is. And so you'll see that not just in the cutscenes, but in the game. I think you see a bit of it in the trailer. Certain attacks will actually have that comic book style and manga style graphic element around it.
Very cool. I'm going to get some chats here, and then maybe Steve, have you talk about some sound. Wanted to throw out there, we've got Mason Zilla. I think we know who he is, right?
I know that guy.
Yeah.
Let's go.
He's a hooligan. He's a hooligan.
Isn't he? Yeah. We've also got our good friend Chris, Seismic Toys. How you doing, Chris?
Nice.
Good to have you. Of course, Chris, great guy. And I actually do have a question. Scotty J is asking the frame rate on each system.
So I mean, I haven't tested every system, but the goal across all of them is like full resolution, and then I think it's 30 on Switch and 60, or I think it's actually uncapped and everything else. So I don't know how that works on PC. I don't know how high it can go on PC. I don't know if there is an upper limit, but you know, basically 60 FPS on everything else.
I guess it depends on your processing power, probably.
Yeah, I mean, some people are running games now at 120 FPS. Actually, yeah, I was talking to Tom, our designer, and he runs the game at 120 FPS. So if your PC rig is up to it, go to town. I think PS5 might be able to do that. I'm not sure. I haven't. I don't even have a PS5. There, it's hard to find. But I've made a PS5 game, so
yes,
that's
developing one.
That's what I'll be playing it on.
Yeah. Well, then Steve, take it from here. Talk to me about sound. What goes into sound design for a video game like this?
Well, this was kind of a newer experience for me because I've helped out Alex with video games in the past, but overall, this was like my first kind of like big job on a video game. But luckily I play a lot of video games, so I know like there should be sound cues, and I'm also like I'm always paying attention to like the sound in video games, being like, okay, if I'm fighting a boss, if it's about to do this attack, it makes this sound kind of thing. So just like trying to keep in mind like, okay, I want to cue the player, and you're trying to tell the story, but all at the same you're trying to reference just like previous media, or like for this specific one was trying to get anime type sounds. For the longest time, I was trying to figure out how to, I was trying to find libraries of them, and you couldn't. And so I just had to try and find a way to make them myself. And that was just for like the general combat sounds. So that was kind of one of my big hurdles, was just learning how to do the combat sounds, and then trying to figure out how to to cue players into what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But the interesting stuff is the monster stuff.
Well, yeah.
The monster sounds. And I remember Alex when he first was like, "Hey, look, I'm gonna do a giant monster game. I want you to do the sounds." I was like, "Okay, cool," because I've got tons of ideas that I've been just cooking, and I have no outlet to do it. So the first thing we did, we made Megadon's roar, and we went out. I went out and I bought a cello bow. I met up with Alex. We came back with a bunch of garbage. It was just garbage, and we're like, we're gonna make this one of the coolest sounds. So I saw this video of a guy with like this box, and it made horror sounds. Like it was different, like just kind of spooky sounds. And there's one where it has like this metal, like bar or like slice of something on this wood box, and he makes this really haunting, like kind of howl sound. It's like I could make a punk rock version of that, and it'd be a wicked sound. So we got an apple box. We shoved a metal ruler in it. And we put the cello bow up against it and added a bunch of distortion, and it just sounded gnarly. And
yeah, you can hear that in the. I think you can hear that in the trailer, right? That's Megadon's big roar.
That's the big roar.
When Megadon does his appearance, that's the one we're hearing. Okay,
yeah,
very cool.
Yeah. And so that, and there's a photo of that somewhere. I remember because it was. We wanted to when we first started this. I was like, I want to do Monster Wars. But like, can we do it? I mean, you can do monster roars by just taking animal roars like from libraries and mixing them around, and you can get some really cool stuff. And I was like, but we gotta, try at least one to do it like vintage style. Like the guys in Toho way back when, or at Tsuburaya when they were making these in an analog way. I really wanted to try that, and
and
that was a lot of fun.
For the most part, I tried to keep that kind of essence alive. Like a lot of the different characters, like Tempest, the robot that we did, was actually, I got a talk box, and for those who don't know, you can plug a guitar into this thing, runs the sound through a hose, and you put the hose in your mouth, and that's how you get like the sound from like Daft Punk or Rocky Mountain Way or something.
Or if you're a classic rocker like me, Bon Jovi, couple of
blah 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 blah.
Yes. And who's the other? It's just a guitarist. That's and he's the singer too. I'll think of his name and blanking on it right now, but he there's some of the talk boxers that are real crazy when you see them on stage with that in their mouth and shaping the guitar sounds with them. So cool. And
so we did that. I got my wife to do it because it's a female character, so figured it'd only be right to get a female to play that voice. And so I got my wife to play that voice, and she's sitting there trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. I had my guitar set up. I took that cello bow again. I was going against the strings and just having her do different kind of words and voices. And the trick was trying to, because just like excerpts, just doing like huh, huh, it doesn't really come across in that process. But you don't want words to really come across either, because it's not, it's still a robot. It's not speaking.
Right.
So it's like you wanted a hint of a voice. So it's just kind of trying to ride that line between getting that a bit of a word out there, but not intelligible enough to be a word.
So that's Tempest. With different kinds of sound effects, everything from being with like being hit or attacking, even certain sounds like that you might expect to hear.
All of that. So my big thing that I tried to do to maintain the vintage Kaiju sound stuff is I would make a big pile of sounds for each creature, and then I would use that as my resource bank, because with a lot of vintage Kaiju stuff, you'd find
another client.
I'm getting work.
He needs some work. But also not to distract you there, but he's asking about a mini fridge. I'm assuming it was you, Alex.
This is actually a VHS cabinet
That's a VHS cabinet.
That's
Thank you for asking, because I love showing it off.
Right.
Right.
He's talking about this.
Oh,
But if he's talking about that
Oh,
CRT
about this.
monitor,
This is an old CRT television. Similar vibe to the VHS cabinet.
right?
But
These guys are very retro, and both of
Yeah.
them are younger than me. So I'm 40. I grew up with Beta and VHS, so they're
Yeah.
talking my era.
Yeah.
But the mini fridge, good try, right?
Yeah. Not quite a mini fridge.
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, and then one more limited run, have pre-order for the physical version of the game after it gets released.
Yeah, so I actually I think I'd have to check with limited run, but I think that their plan is to probably put the pre-orders up on release day or something around there. I'd have to double check with them, but yeah, they're definitely going to have the physical version pre-orders up, and we'll make sure to let everyone know about the pre-order period and everything on our Twitter and in our Discord, so that you won't miss it. Yeah. And we've got some cool stuff planned for that physical edition. I have to say, we've I can't talk too much about it, but I can't wait to unveil what we've been working on.
All right, yeah. Let's get back to some sound effects. So we've got Tempest, Megadon out of the way.
Oh yeah, so just to finish my previous thought, for just to try and create the same kind of feeling for vintage kaiju sounds, I would make a big bank of that roar, and then that would be my resource. I would then go into there, and it didn't necessarily make the whole. It wouldn't suffice for everything, but then I would blend them together, because back in the day, a lot of these guys would just have these, a very small amount of sound effects due to budget reasons or whatever, or resources, and then they would just have to repeat. That's why you hear like the same roar over and over and over again a lot of the times. So in an effort to recreate that, I would limit myself in that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool. The vintage kaiju, I mean, a lot of us kaiju fans, yeah, we know how those sound effects were put together. Some of them are kind of the best kept secrets. But yeah, to think going back, you probably were already thinking with the cello. Was it a bow that you got? You said, yeah. So you were already thinking the stringed instruments to create those roars or those sounds. That how can I make my own version of the stringed instrument sound effect? So yeah, very cool and innovative when it comes down to how these guys. It's not like they could go to a bank, library of sound effects that were just out there pre-made for you to manipulate digitally and whatever else. So cool. And, kudos to you for doing the legwork on some more of this, and then also incorporating your wife. I hope she gets a credit in there.
Yeah,
she does. I'm pretty sure she's.
Yeah, I think she does.
She's in the credit. And it's funny. I have to mention. I think part of the reason that Steve went through all this process is because he's obsessed, and we'll be watching some monster movie together or whatever, or even any movie, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's a stock roar. Like here, like it's in this movie too," and it'll just like ruin the illusion for me. And so,
just the other day, I was watching a video about Son of Godzilla, and I heard Manila's roar. I'm like, that's just a goat. It's just a goat, just screaming. I'm like, oh no, what have I done to myself?
You've ruined it. The magic is gone.
But because of that, he can like reverse engineer so many of these roars. It'd be like he made the discovery. I don't think is the way he's really down, but I remember he sent me a file one day, and he was like, listen to this and tell me what it sounds like. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of like Godzilla's roar. And he was like, that's just a goose.
Not enhanced or not reversed. It was slowed down. I slowed it down like crazy, but it was I mean, it had the very distinct startup and end of the 54 roar specifically. It was very like, this is like
very uncanny.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
And so of course I used it.
So how is it you can even stand Godzilla Raids Again? I mean, can you make your own cut of that with the roars correct, please? I mean,
That's the thing is it's funny because I was definitely that kid. I was the kid from Godzilla's Revenge, where it's just like that's that sound like you're.
oh man, yeah.
So when I first saw God, or I guess Gigantus,
Yeah.
I couldn't watch it. It just I was like, that's not right. I can't do it.
Right.
I can't do it. And yeah.
Meanwhile, I didn't even notice when I watched Gamera the Brave. I didn't even notice they didn't use Gamera's roar. And then years later, people were like, "Man, they didn't use Gamera's roar. What the hell?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess you're right."
Yeah, now that you mention it, you're right. Actually, they don't.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the interview that I had with someone who'd mentioned how the Gamera's roar was used in King Ghidorah, 1992 or 90, 91, 92, whatever, 92. Yeah. So it was like whoever it was behind the scenes kept denying that it was Gamera's roar, and it's like, well, it's so distinctly Gamera's roar. It's,
Yeah, like what else could it be? I don't
my
know.
kids were in the room saying, "Oh, you're watching Gamera." No, that's not Gamera. So,
Yeah.
and then he turns from Gamera to Rodan in the same like scene there. But I know we're getting off of track. But
Yeah.
I guess the point is that we love sound effects and how these things are put together. I'm sure you've seen like those behind the scenes on Jurassic Park, the original, especially when they were putting those sound effects together of the the dolphin making that raptor kind of sound and just so many cool different ways that they could mix those sounds together in that time, which was not that long ago, but how much it's come from there. But unfortunately, I think they kind of hit a peak, and then a lot of those sound effects kept getting reused. And you probably noticed that right off the bat too, is that they kept using some of these sounds over and over again in the subsequent movies, or you hear them. I hear them a lot in other cartoons. I hear like not Beast Wars, like the Transformers series. My kids like it's Rescue Bots. I hear some of the sounds of the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park in there too, and I'm just like, all they did was just do that. I mean, anyone could do that. Could you have come up with something original, right? But I guess whatever. So talk to me more about the other characters and sounds that might go into them.
So Ganira, again, was another female kaiju. So that one I was trying to be inspired by other famous female kaiju. So I was trying to think of like a Mothra inspired kind of thing. And Mothra, I know it's not the actual way it was created, but Mothra's roar always sounded like a firework to me. So I used firework sounds to make Ganira mixed with various dolphin sounds, and I snake my own little dolphin sounds in there every so often because there's only so many dolphin clicks in my sound library, so I had to start doing them with my own mouse. And then speaking of adding my own vocals, I voice Aegis Prime.
Okay.
Completely.
All you.
Yeah. It's pretty distorted. Like there's a bunch of effects thrown on just to make it sound a little more, Giant Hero-esque. But
do the mechs have a communication through coded language, like sound effect language or something to that effect? I mean, they must be mostly silent.
So the mechs actually, their I guess language I created to be that guitar talk box thing. Mm-hmm. They have that kind of that sound, and the because then there's the pilot inside and stuff, and they all communicate through like a walkie or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And so with Aegis Prime, even though he's a giant hero like Ultraman, so he's this big thing, and what we wanted to do was separate, like, okay, when you're playing as Aegis Prime, the sounds that he makes aren't his human voice, it's his superhuman voice. So it's like that's Steve's voice as he throws punches and grunts and yells and stuff. But his human character, whose name is Eiji Murasame, he can talk, so he can still talk on radio. So it's almost like he still exists inside of Aegis Prime, kind of like how in Ultraman shows, when Ultraman's fighting, he's just going yeah, yeah, yeah. But you'll often see the human character that is, kind of inside the soul of Ultraman can speak and still communicate.
And I just want to shout out Brent, who does Eiji's voice. He's great and does a great job in that.
Yeah, he's great to work with.
Yeah.
And then did you kind of go through some radio style effects to do like a transmitting of his voice, like to the other pilot?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
Steve also did all the voice recording sessions for the game.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Really
And capturing that for a video game's got to be interesting, because I don't know if you had necessarily always maybe something visually to reference in the same way sometimes animation or film has.
Yeah, it was completely blind for the most part. I mean, it just goes to show, I guess, the talent of all the people that we got is just incredible, because they didn't need they could visualize it in their heads, and they could go from there.
Yeah,
because
because we would give them the expression sheets for each character, but that was pretty much it. So that was like, maybe 5 to 10 images, drawings of these characters doing different emotions, and they would take it and run with it. And somehow magically, when we sync the voices up to the faces in the game, it works.
Yeah, just the amazing talent. You can definitely tell when you've got some animations that are out there where someone's just phoning it in, and they don't care about the characters. So it sounds like you could really tell in this one, when we actually get the chance to see the full-fledged game, that we'll get to hear that expression, and we can immerse ourselves in that experience better, because we're not distracted by the fact that these don't somehow match or don't fit. But it sounds like you got some A+ people on there. I don't know if Scotty J is a friend of yours, but on the inside.
We ever get? Oh, this is a reference to a Twitter joke that we posted where Mike, one of our programmers, he had asked if he could expense, because we all work from home now, we're all remote.
Well, yeah.
And when we worked in an office, obviously the company would just buy coffee, and we would just have a coffee pot going on. And he was complaining that his coffee at home was bad and that we should buy him better coffee. And I was like, no, buy your own coffee. So actually, it's funny that you said I had my Secret Santa this year, and as my gift to him, I got him a book and some very nice coffee. So now he can stop complaining. But it wasn't a work expense.
It was not a work expense. It was a personal gift.
I would also like to say, when I started full time, my first question was, can I write coffee up? And they both said I was fired, but I kept working anyways.
Can't write coffee up.
Oh man, how is it we're supposed to get all this work done then? So
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it seemed like an inside kind of thing. So let's get into the characters. I'm interested more in the story now of these characters, maybe the development of each of them, how they came to be, and then get into the actual story. And being that monsters are characters, we consider them Kaiju as characters, not just mindless whatever, working off of instinct. They do that too, but they also have intelligence. I'd kind of like you to go through each of the characters, either one of you guys, and tell me a little about them, how we might get to know those characters as we're playing.
Sure. Yeah. So just a little background. So the game takes place in the future, in 2065, and basically, due to environmental catastrophe that kind of happens in the 2030s, that leads to the emergence of the Nephilim. So these are giant monsters that start emerging out of the bowels of the earth, And so two of the first Nephilim that show up are Megadon and Genera.
Okay.
And they're destructive and they're super powerful and dangerous. They also have a propensity to fight other Nephilim. So like any other Nephilim that shows up, these two, for whatever reason, seem to just tear them apart. So an organization called Dawn is formed, the Defense Alliance Worldwide Network, in order to fight these Nephilim and defend humanity from them. But they're smart, so they decide to study and research them as well. And they end up, I guess you could say, recruiting Megadon and Genera. They find a way to subdue them, and they find a way to control them. But we don't know, especially at the outset of the game, we don't know how. It's not clear how do they get these two Nephilim to work with us to help wipe out the rest of them. And that's kind of part of the mystery one of the mysteries of the game that you'll uncover as you play is, okay, like, how much control do they have? Can we really trust these monsters? How did Dawn do this? So that's Megadon and Genera. And then Tempest, Galahad, and Aegis Prime, those kind of have these human proxies. So Tempest Galahad is a giant, they're called atoms. So an atom is an atomic, or what is it? Atomic telekinetically operated mech. Uh-huh. So these are these kind of mech suits that are used all over the world for, from construction to defense. But Tempest Galahad is the most expensive and the most powerful of them, and she's piloted by a pilot named Jamila Sinai. And so, we know who's controlling Tempest, and Jamila's parents were killed in a Nephilim attack when she was young, and that kind of drove her to want to join Dawn and to want to become an atom pilot. And then Aegis Prime, who is the human Eiji Murasame, basically Eiji Murasame was a scientist, and he wanted to research about the Nephilim and where they came from, and he had noticed that there were a lot of ancient depictions of Nephilim in hieroglyphs, in cave paintings, and all sorts of ancient artifacts. So he went to this temple south of Bermuda to research them, and in a kind of unfortunate, tragic accident involving this kind of energy that the Nephilim emit, everyone else he was with died, but he survived and was transformed into this giant superhero called Aegis Prime. So once he transformed into the hero, he decided, well, I'm going to use this newfound power to defend Earth against the Nephilim. So that's kind of how our four characters come together. And when we start the game, it's right when Jamila first joins, and all four of them are going out together for their first mission. Okay. So, yeah.
So you bring in kind of that ancient alien sort of the mythology of Earth and its history to bring out these monsters, so that they have that kind of origin story with that mythic, not so much science.
Yeah, there's a little bit of both. It's kind of like the mixture of, because they early on they try to understand the biology of the Nephilim, because they don't really apply to our laws of physics and biology very well. Mm-hmm. And we understand that, we point that out. And so part of that is discovering, like, what is the actual origin of these Nephilim? Why how can they exist? How can they walk? Where do they come from? That's a huge part of the mystery of it. And that leads to looking at these ancient depictions of them and understanding, well, are these invaders from outer space? Is this the ancient spirit of the earth? Is this something from another dimension? Like, how do these exist, and how do they relate to, the animals live on Earth now, if at all? So It's a bit of there's a whole section of the game called the archives. So, if you want, you can just play the game and go through it and have fun and get that just the story. But if you want to dig deeper into that lore, there's actually a whole section dedicated to it, where as you play, you'll unlock new pieces of information, new artifacts, describing the Nephilim and the history of the world that you're fighting through.
Okay, so that's cool. I was going to ask if they were unlockables as you go along, so
Yeah.
it makes that experience immersive, and that's so cool. So the inspiration of the design, story, everything that kind of colors even that go into this, where do you kind of draw some of your inspiration from that's out there? Other than maybe some of the obvious, I would say that we're all fan, obviously Godzilla, but if they wanted to narrow it down to some specifics.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have inspired so many facets of the game. I think that when it comes to the visual design of the Nephilim, of the creatures themselves, one of the things that we looked at, so when it came to designing Megadon and Ganira, we tried to pull a little more from nature, right? So we tried to pull from nature and then modify it into something that's more monstrous. And then when it came to the rest of the Nephilim cast, so the enemies that you're fighting, we pulled more from abstract concepts. So we still pulled from nature, especially like the really weird creatures you can find, like deep sea creatures and things like that. But we also pulled from like abstract art, ancient art, so like ancient sculptures and paintings and depictions of creatures like that, and we tried to incorporate that into their designs. So they look partly organic, they look partly not organic. They look partly almost manufactured in some ways. That's and there's a reason for that as well. So there's a lot of inspirations there. Overall, it's hard to pinpoint one major inspiration narratively, but I mean, just the general love for the kaiju genre, being able to talk about big picture problems. Like I feel like kaiju are the best kind of narrative subgenre to talk about problems on a global scale, on a humanity scale, because your characters are larger than any human can possibly be. So a lot of my favorites, and I think a lot of the team's favorites, because we did watch a lot of stuff leading up to it, were the Gamera trilogy, Pacific Rim, of course, Godzilla and Ultraman, and we also looked at Patlabor. I don't know if you've ever watched the anime Patlabor.
It's a new one.
It's good stuff. It's pretty dense, especially the movies. The TV show is pretty lighthearted and fun. The movies get pretty dense, but they do a really good job kind of building a world where I guess giant robots are part of normal life.
I'll ask some more questions about color, and then I'm going to ask a few things about the mechs here in a second. We do have Scotty J with this question. Was any thought put into the design of the game to accommodate play styles like speed running or score chasing?
Absolutely, especially the score chasing element. So every mission in the game is your time is cataloged for every mission, which we just wanted to do, period. But the kind of bigger thing for us was the score chasing element, and we were kind of inspired in one part by classic arcade games. I'm a big arcade gamer, and then on the other, on kind of more modern character action games like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. So you can beat a mission, but every combat segment in the mission you're going to be ranked on. So depending on how quickly, efficiently, and how carefully you dispatch all the Nephilim, you'll be ranked from S all the way down to F. So S, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then at the end of the mission, that's all tallied up, and you're given an overall rank for the mission. And that's for score chasers to be able to say, hey, I got S in every mission. but also the higher you rank, the better augments you get, and that's the kind of loot that you use to power up your kaiju. So even if you're not like a hardcore score chaser, we really encourage you to try to learn the combat mechanics and play as best as possible so you can unlock the best loot.
Okay, cool. And compliment for Steve here. Your sounds are awesome from Chris. Yep. And comment on your Patlabor. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Every kaiju fan should watch Patlabor Early Days episode 3. Okay.
They definitely should. There's a lot of homage to things that we all know and love.
Do I have to find it on a physical copy out there? Is there a streaming service I can find this? Because
I don't know if it's streaming, but I was able to snag the complete box set of everything Patlabor from Right Stuff Anime for like, I think it was like $30 or something on Blu-ray, and it's like really pristine. It's really well done. It's a great set. So it's like it's got 2 series and a bunch of movies and OVAs. It's definitely worth it.
Cool. Getting back to color. So we have in the trailer, at least I saw the version of Megadon. I don't know if you were calling it the fire or volcanic kind of version, not the Arctic, obviously, version of him. Do we see the Arctic version of him come out in the game without spoiling maybe too much?
So another feature of the game is that every time you complete a mission, you get a little bit of money and you get augments, and you can use that money to re-roll your augments to kind of change the stats on them, or you can sell augments to gain money. And there's a shop where you can buy upgrades. You can buy health upgrades, rage upgrades, and you can also buy color palettes. So you can kind of you can get a color palette that is the Arctic color, and then in the character select you can swap Megadon over to that color. So every character has I think it's like 7 different color combinations per character, and they're a lot of fun. Everyone on the team designed one, and some of them are winks and homages to other famous characters that you'll probably recognize when you unlock the costume. But yeah, that's another way you can kind of customize the experience for yourself.
Okay, cool. So I was kind of wondering how that was going to play out in there, if there were either different abilities or if it was part of like you said, a color scheme to the mechs. So they would have different color schemes as well, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you go along, which I can already see. The color schemes of the armor. They're like a Tempest. So the kind of the design, Ultraman, aside, some of the other maybe mecha genres. I actually kind of throwing it out there. I could be completely off, but the Guyver, it's not really mech, but there's just maybe a little of the look to the Guyver I see in maybe the mechs. I don't know if that's was even in there or subconsciously kind of in the background.
Well, I do know that so that I think that I don't know if it was Aegis. I know so Tempest Galahad was designed by Mike Lambert, and I know he's a huge Tokusatsu fan, and he's introduced me to Tokusatsu stuff that I had never even heard of before until he sent me the files. But he's a big fan of Guyver. I'm a big fan of Guyver as well. So there might be a little Guyver love tucked away somewhere in the game.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of thinking of some of the other kind of mecha genres that are out there. The fact that the pilot is on board, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so not in a sort of remote control sort of situation. This is on board Sentai, Power Rangers style, on board Voltron. So kind of just works well with that. Scotty says, just that all sounds fantastic. So,
hey, thanks, Scotty.
Scotty is pumped. So, yeah, between Scotty and my son Eli, there will be no sleep until the release date. So we're really excited about that. And so with the story and sound effects, everything's coming together. What other elements are we missing? Do we have a score or music that goes along with your gameplay?
Yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the score is it's pretty cool. We worked with Dan Rodriguez, who 13 AM Games fans would know. He's done all of our previous games, and he's a really talented guy. And we wanted to do, because the gameplay of Dawn of the Monsters is actually it's kind of fast paced. It's not slow and plodding. We wanted to make sure that it was fun first, as opposed to like accurate to the movies in terms of how fast you would be moving. So it's fast paced, it's action packed, it's intense, and we wanted the music to reflect that. So we've actually developed a dynamic music system. So depending on how intense the action is, the music will ramp up to accommodate. So if you're just walking around and there's no enemies about, the music's kind of low key. It's a little tense, it's like, hey, there's still danger around here somewhere, but it's a little low key. As soon as you enter into combat, it kicks up and it gets more intense, and it, changes and morphs between all these different permutations and variations. And then when you're fighting something that's really dangerous, the music kicks up even higher. So the music is cool in its own right, but it's also a way to let the player know, how dangerous or how intense is the situation right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was going to say, it sounds very Devil May Cry, like you mentioned earlier. So that's awesome. And so with the inspiration way back, if you go to the Neo Geo days, King of the Monsters, which was more of the tournament style kind of fighting, but you incorporate more than just that tournament style, because it's got the consistent storyline as you're cruising through your stages. I don't think some of those tournaments, well, especially that King of the Monsters, didn't have your power ups, your cutscenes between. I don't remember anything to that effect coming out. So that is awesome to see and hear about coming out. And then the music can really make the game and get the heart pumping, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is, like they did a little bit of this in King of the Monsters too, but in King of the Monsters, it's kind of just like, all right, you got your two monsters and you squitter off, and then one wins and you go to the next level. In our game, you're fighting against hordes and hordes of monsters. You might encounter in one level, you might have to rip through 50 kaiju to get to the end. So it's really, we wanted the player to feel really powerful. So it's really quite the brawl, and it gets even crazier when you've got someone playing it with you and you're playing cooperatively, because then you're just mowing through hordes and hordes of giant monsters.
That co-op mode you mentioned to my son, yeah, that was something exciting when you're playing the Switch or whatever, and being able to play in co-op mode with someone else. I think that's great to have interaction with others alongside of you. So that co-op mode, probably every version you're going to be able to have that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And we're getting down to the last about 10 minutes here. I want to make sure that people get the chance to check you out on social sites. So if you want to kind of outline everywhere that they can find anything Dawn of the Monsters, 13 AM Games out there on social media.
For sure. Yeah, we've got our website, 13amgames.com, is great, because it just kind of collects everything that we've either worked on in the past or are working on now. It's also got links to our Discord, so the official 13AM Games Discord, which is where we're posting updates. We're talking with the community, and they're talking with each other, and that's really useful. And then on Twitter, at 13AM Games, that's where we update with new screenshots and GIFs and articles and all sorts of stuff. So each one of those tends to link to the other, but those are the three main ways that we share stuff. And there's also on Instagram, Seismic Toys. They're also on Facebook. They're who make these guys. That's me and Chris Olio, and we've got updates on new and upcoming toys or sales or whatever, if you're interested in Dawn of the Monsters collectibles.
In fact, while I can jump off of that, Chris had mentioned that there's a section of the site, the Seismic site, for specific Dawn of the Monsters, and so you guys have standard Ganira, clear Ganira, Arctic Megadon still available out there. I've got my Arctic Megadon, and that's just an awesome looking figure. That blue, just pops. I've got recently the Gyrus, which is awesome to see too.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, Seismic is just bringing these guys to life that are out there. Yes, there's Gyrus.
Yes.
Beautiful looking. So colorful. Problem is when I have him in front of the green screens, when I do my review of him, I'm gonna have to do him somewhere else because
yeah,
he disappeared.
He won't green screen well.
Yeah, it doesn't work too well. So yeah, shout out to seismic.com. Any other ways that you could be supported? Is there merch or anything to that effect, or something you've been thinking of, so I can get me a Dawn of the Monsters t-shirt?
There will be, and that'll actually be so our publisher is Way Forward. So on Twitter at Way Forward, I think it might be at Way Forward Technologies. They've got their website. They're an awesome partner. They've made a ton of great games, and so they're going to be releasing the game. They're going to be distributing it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's digital first, and then we are doing a physical edition with a company called Limited Run Games,
mm-hmm.
and that's going to have its own collector's edition with a bunch of goodies in it. And I'd keep an eye on our social media accounts and Way Forwards, as well as we'll probably be announcing. We'd like to do some merch stuff, especially if there's demand for it, like posters, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe even getting the fans to kind of show their scores, show their progress and success with the games as it's coming along. So definitely being able to jump on Discord and Twitter and all that to share screenshots and how everyone's kind of doing their custom colors that they're coming up with on the mechs and the kaiju. Though you don't want to call them kaiju, Nephilim.
You can call them kaiju. It's that's fine. I mean, they're all kaiju, but the Nephilim are specifically the evil ones that we're trying to squash.
Yes. So the Nephilim being the evil ones. So yeah, but kaiju mechs. Yeah. So that is very cool. Any idea if you can tell me about figures for Aegis or Tempest?
I can't say anything now. It's definitely something that we're looking into, especially once the game comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And Megadon and Ganira did great. So if there's demand for it, we'd love to keep making that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely want people to check it out. And I guess, let's say that you have a pretty decent success. 13 AM Games is just churning out the downloads and then the physical copies of it. Would there be ideas in the back of your mind of a sequel or anything beyond that?
Oh yeah, I've got loads of ideas about sequels or even like maybe a DLC expansion or something. If the game does well, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to get a Dawn of the Monsters kind of series going out there. Who came up with the name, actually, collectively?
I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it was Aaron Kopasinski. So he used to work with us, and now he's still a shareholder. And he's on our board of directors, but he was a guy who helped. He did a lot of marketing, graphic design stuff, and I'm pretty sure the idea Dawn of the Monsters was his, and the idea that Dawn means Defense Alliance Worldwide Network, and that's the organization that you're working for.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the games that I've worked on, it was the only one where immediately we kind of had a name and we're like, yeah, that's it. That makes sense. And just stuck with it and never changed it.
I'm not sure if this is a question for you guys, but to ask a question, if not could Kong join the game since he's technically in the public domain. What we just talked about, perhaps a sequel. Who knows? Kong could make an appearance.
Hey, if the game does well and there's a sequel, I would love to have Kong in it. Absolutely.
If there's any other public domain, creatures out there, or obviously original creatures, there's just nothing like it to be able to bring in ones of your own design. Let's say if there was someone out there who's kind of listening and saying, I'm not really a gamer. Is this the game that I would want to get into? I mean, do I have to be a pro gamer at a bunch of other kinds of modern games to really like this or get into it?
I don't think so. I think it's got enough in it that, like a lot of the people at 13M Games are not necessarily people who play a lot of hardcore beat 'em up or action games, and they're all having a lot of fun. I mean, it's got its challenge to it for sure, but it's designed to kind of ease you into things and give you a lot of different ways to power up your characters and learn the ropes. But I'd also say if you're not the most hardcore gamer but you still really want to play the game, I'd recommend tagging in a friend and doing it co-op. It's a lot of fun. You could have many jovial nights of entertainment out of this game with a friend. Because I love playing it single player. Playing it co-op, it gets pretty wild.
Just to add on, sorry, I was just gonna say it's really friendly to it's a friendly game to start. Like it's a lot of games nowadays are kind of mean to the player right off the gate. They just drop you in and they beat the crap out of you. So this one's pretty friendly. It throws one monster at you, and then it kind of eases you into it, and then next thing you know, you're exploding a bunch of different kaiju, and it just feels awesome to do.
So that learning curve for this 40-year-old guy right here is not going to be too bad. When my son is beating me in it, now we're going to be co-op. But he's going to have the higher scores count and higher kill count and all that. So easy mode or super easy mode or super difficult.
Or super difficult. There's no difficulty modes. What we did in terms of how to address difficulty was each of the different characters kind of works as a kind of difficulty selection. So Megadon's an all-around character. Ganira is probably a great character for beginners because she can actually summon a crab that works as a little co-op partner for you. So that means that the monsters will try to attack the crab instead of you. It makes the game a lot easier for new players. And then Aegis Prime is probably what would be like a hard mode, so to speak, because he's very fast and combo oriented. He's a lot more technical. If you really like Devil May Cry and that kind of stuff, you'll probably like Aegis Prime. And then on top of that, there's the DNA Augments. So these are abilities you can equip to your character, and they buff your stats and do all sorts of stuff. So if you're really good at the game and you want to challenge yourself, you can equip an augment that increases your damage but lowers your defense so that you can take fewer hits before you die. If you're, you want things to be a little easier, you're struggling, there are augments that can increase your health or can give you vampirism. So each hit heals you or increases your defense, or things like that. So there's a lot of ways you can customize the experience. That's not just like a difficulty selection slider.
Gotcha. Chris wants to troll you guys real quick, though.
Kick this guy out of the chat. Get him out of here. Get this guy out of here.
Legit, right? Can we upgrade Megadon's Flame Breath into a full-on beam?
Not in this game, at least. Maybe in the sequel. He does have a much more powerful attack than the Flame Breath, though. So for what that's worth, it's pretty slick.
Worth looking into. So anyways, I'd encourage everyone to check out follow these guys on all the social media that's out there. You've got the YouTube channel, so you can check out that trailer in case you haven't seen it. It is definitely well worth it. And follow these guys, ask them questions, keep their Twitter threads alive, and then waiting, we're on that time where we're going to be waiting on the release date, so that's a way to find out when it actually happens. And check out 13 a.m. games, go to Seismic, check out the toys, see if you're interested in picking those up. And I just really appreciate Steve and Alex being here with me here on the Monster Report Live, and we are so excited to see the game when it finally gets released.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for joining us on another episode of the Monster Report, and we will catch you all next time.